When a supporter called him the King of Israel, U.S. President Donald Trump embraced it. But even before that, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a personal friend of the president, likened Trump to King Cyrus of Persia, who helped usher Jews to safety in the Holy Land. It was just the kind of language that appealed to the billionaire and former reality show star, and perhaps no other president has come as close to earning such a title. The year began with a funding cut of more than $60 million slated for the Palestinian Authority's security forces. Trump signed a law allowing Americans to sue any entity receiving U.S. foreign aid for what is described as an act of war. So the PA declined the funds. This came on the heels of dramatic cuts in U.S. assistance for Palestinians in 2018. Hundreds of millions cut from education, healthcare, and refugees in both the West Bank and Gaza.
We live off this coupon. More than 70 or 80% of our livelihood depends on this coupon. There is no income. Gazans are in permanent unemployment. There is no work or life in Gaza.
The cuts are intended to pressure Palestinians to return to talks with Israel. With Jerusalem already off the table, the Palestinian Authority, which also seeks a capital in East Jerusalem, says there is nothing left to discuss. But ahead of an election in Israel, Netanyahu needed a boost. In March, Trump recognized the Golan Heights, annexed in 1967, as part of Israel.
We're celebrating the Golan Heights. It's something that I've been hearing about for many years from many people I've been studying for years, and this should have been done, I would say, numerous presidents ago. But for some reason, they didn't do it, and I'm very honored to have done it.
You've done it not once, but twice, with your bold proclamation on Jerusalem and with your bold proclamation today on the Golan. Your proclamation comes at a time when the Golan is more important than ever for our security, when Iran is trying to establish bases in Syria to strike at Israel.
Within weeks of the announcement, Israelis unveiled a planned settlement in the Golan named after the U.S. president. The Palestinian Authority says the U.S. is opening the floodgates.
The first step was annexation, recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, moving the embassy. The second step, Israel's sovereignty over the Golan. The third step will be annexation of the West Bank. And the fourth step will be declaring the recognition of the Trump administration of the state of Gaza.
Throughout this time, the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, a childhood friend of the Netanyahu family, said he was still working on a groundbreaking peace deal, a so-called deal of the century. The plan's release was repeatedly delayed as Israel went through 2 election cycles and now faces a third. But some details leaked, and the notion of land for peace, as outlined by the United Nations, was nowhere to be found. The U.S. convened a meeting in Bahrain to urge billions in business investment for Palestinians. But they were not represented, and there was no talk of security or borders. That, Kushner said, was for another time.
My direct message to the Palestinian people is that despite what those who have let you down in the past tell you, President Trump and America have not given up on you. This workshop is for you. Peace can only be achieved if it comes with a pathway for people to improve their lives. One who is more hopeful and sees opportunity for his or her family will put energy into pursuing opportunity instead of blaming others for their current misfortune.
But redirecting attention from Israel's blockade of Gaza in particular only inflamed leaders.
No to the deal of the century, no to giving up on an atom of Palestine, all Palestinians, no to giving up on Jerusalem, no to settlement projects, no to an alternative home, and no to the expansion projects for those who are dreaming of expanding Gaza into the Sinai.
In November, the Trump administration dropped another bombshell, announcing that Israeli settlements built on occupied land are not illegal. The move was swiftly criticized by U.S. allies, including the European Union. The Geneva Convention says settling civilians on occupied territories is a violation of international law.
This is a deliberate attempt to make settlements acceptable. And by doing so, it's going to pave the way for more expansive settlement growth. It's a direct assault on the two-state solution. It undermines years of refining parameters for resolving the core issues.
Not so, says the Secretary of State.
We think, in fact, we've increased the likelihood that the vision for peace that this administration has, we think we've created space for that to be successful. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to move forward on that before too terribly long.
Before Washington powered down for the year, the Trump administration brought in one more piece of legislation to frame discussion about Israel. Free speech advocates say the executive order on combating anti-Semitism has a chilling effect, particularly on college campuses. It specifically targets the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, known as BDS, whose activists say is a nonviolent campaign to highlight Israeli crimes.
This is our message to universities. If you want to accept the tremendous amount of federal dollars that you get every year, you must reject anti-Semitism. It's very simple. We forcefully condemn this anti-Semitic campaign against the state of Israel and its citizens.
The move proved a hit with Trump's staunchly pro-Israel evangelical Christian base, a Republican voting bloc that is critical to winning the 2020 election. The administration seemingly feels no need to appear an honest broker between Israelis and Palestinians. In an interview with a radio station just before Christmas, Pompeo urged listeners to pray that there will be a political resolution to this conflict. Yasmine El-Sabawi, TRT World, Washington.